Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, and we're going to be doing 3 segments today as usual. Another slow day for the NBA, but have no fear because tomorrow basketball is finally coming back and we won't be bored just constantly waiting for an NBA game to just happen, and now it's finally going to happen every single day. So this is when the real season sort of starts, and this is where teams start taking their placements in the league a little bit more seriously. So really excited to see the teams coming back after the All-Star break and which teams are going to make it all the way to the playoffs. So for our 3 segments today, we are going to continue talking about the Doc Rivers situation as it has gotten worse since we last looked at it, and more people started talking about it, so we're going to look into that for a little bit. We're also going to look at the interview between Jason Tatum and a member of ESPN. And Jason Tatum had a few things to say on this interview, so we're going to take a look at that. And we're also going to talk about why Kevin Durant did not join the New York Knicks in 2019, as there was new information regarding that, so we're just going to touch up on that. We also have our 4th segment as well, so just be sure to stay tuned for that. But before I begin with the first segment of the show, I'd like to remind everybody, as always, to please remember to tip and to donate to get your comments recognized. The link is in the description as well as in the ticker below every single show segment. The link is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Once again, the link is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. And with that out of the way, we can go ahead and get into our first segment, which is going to talk a little bit more about the Doc Rivers situation. Now, for those of you who weren't here on the previous podcast, I mentioned previously how Doc Rivers, there were some comments exchanged between JJ Redick over on First Take about how JJ Redick and his opinions on Doc Rivers. JJ Redick previously, I'm just going to pull up the quote right now, just to make sure that I say everything properly, but if the quote would load up, Jesus Christ. But JJ Redick said, "I've seen the trend for years. The trend is always making excuses. Doc, we get it. Taking over a team in the middle of a season is hard. It's always an excuse. It's always throwing your team under the bus. There's never accountability with that guy." Now, obviously, that's a lot of harsh words coming from one of your former players, especially when his best years were under the Clippers. Now, I commented on that in the previous podcast. I didn't really think it meant that much, but Patrick Beverley thought otherwise. Now, we all know Patrick Beverley. He loves opening his mouth, and he loves bringing himself into conversations via his podcast, spreading his own opinions whenever he can. So he responded to JJ Redick on Twitter saying, "This man actually saved your career, started you when no one else wanted to, and you retire, go on TV, and say that." So obviously there's a lot of being the fact that Doc Rivers now is, and the fact that Beverley has coaching experience under Doc Rivers, it makes sense how Beverley is coming into Doc's defense, because saying these comments like this on TV, while they might be true, is a little bit uncalled for in my personal opinion, because again, he was a player that coached you, and you sort of it's sort of a respect thing. I understand that as of right now, and from what it looks like, Doc might not have much respect for a lot of these players, constantly throwing them under the bus, but still, you don't want to end up being that same guy doing that same thing. And JJ Redick actually had a tweet to respond about Patrick Beverley, because while Beverley does have a point, I do think his delivery on that point comes off as a little bit rude, uncalled for as well, given how he's talking to JJ Redick like he's some kind of scrub. And he responds, "Pat, my guy, I had a 4-year offer with a player option for the same money to be a starter for a different team." FOH, and you guys know what that means, but I'm not going to say that here. Saved my career, in quotes. So, obviously, JJ Redick, he took offense to that because, Patrick Beverley talked about him like he was some kind of scrub, and he needed that position, that starting position. Otherwise, he wouldn't be much in the league. But clearly, JJ Redick's value is a lot more to the for the league, especially now, and it was back then. Given how he has another player option, he had another player option waiting for him, so he didn't really need Doc Rivers. So I guess he has a little bit more ground to say that. He also had some more comments on First Take. He said, "I can do a video on my podcast where I break down the last 9 games the Pelicans have used Zion Williamson as the primary ball handler, and it'll get 54,000 views on YouTube. But I want to call out a coach yesterday. Oh, that gets tens of millions of engagements. That's the ecosystem we live in. So do fans actually want to be educated or not?" That was JJ Redick's comments via First Take. So obviously he has a lot of things to say about the media targeting him and what he said about Doc Rivers. So I'm not entirely sure if he was trying to, I guess you could say, spread truth in saying those things about Doc, because it's not like he's saying things that the media doesn't already know, if that makes sense. Doc has, since he's been done with the Celtics and his recent coaching careers, he's always had histories of being of not being particularly well with his teams in the postseason and in the games that really matter. So everyone in the media knows that his coaching experience is a little bit lacking, but it's not like any of the players are like that quick to say it. So it's sort of like a you see and you don't tell kind of thing, which I understand why he's upset, because it's like, I'm just stating the obvious, but at the same time, it's like, you can't really just be doing that on live TV like that. That's unreal levels of disrespect, in my opinion. And so obviously, like, there are different opinions about this, and I'm trying to get Austin Rivers' opinion on this as well, just trying to pull up the quotes on that and what he previously said. So because Austin Rivers, while he was also on TV, he decided to respond to the comments on his father. He obviously knows that his father can defend himself, but it's not like he doesn't have anything to say for the guy. So one of the quotes that he obviously he didn't agree with JJ Redick, given how that's his father, so he's obviously not going to agree with him. But he said, quote, "For someone who is not accountable, he seems to always be held responsible." And well, yes, he is always being held responsible. Like, the media is like forcing him to be held responsible. It's not like something that he's willingly accepting. Like, because there are certain coaches that are like, "Oh, this game was on me. This was my fault. We have to go in and I have to make better adjustments." He doesn't do any of that, or at least he hasn't been doing any of that on any of the previous teams that he's been on. And when you say he's being held responsible, yes, he is being held responsible, but that's not really being held responsible. Isn't really the same as as being held accountable, because being held accountable is sort of like, you understand that it was your fault and you understand why it was your fault. Now you just have to deal with those repercussions. Being held responsible is sort of like where you don't understand, or like you don't admit that you're actually the cause of that, and you're just like, you're being used as like sort of the main reason as to why something doesn't end up going your way. That's sort of what being held responsible is compared to being held accountable. And I can't really say that Doc Rivers has held accountability at all in any of the situations that he's been in, because again, while it does seem like it is his fault, because every single time he's coached a team, the team underperformed. At the same time, the players aren't really performing that well either. So it's not like what he's saying is wrong, but at the same time, it's not like he's doing anything to fix it. At least given the fact that this has been a pattern every single time in the postseason for him. But it's not like he goes out saying it was my bad either. So like that's sort of like, I don't think he's really held accountable for these I don't think he holds himself accountable for a lot of these losses. And the fact that the media isn't blind doesn't mean that you have to be blind too. And he also mentions that your best years were with the Clippers. This seems a little bit weird. And yes, I understand that like his best years were with the Clippers, but obviously like when he was with the Clippers, they blew the 3-1 lead. So maybe he's still a little bit resentful for the fact that the team was unable to get over that hump. But regardless, it's not like that he was lying about any of the things that he said. It's not that he was overly harsh. It's not that he said anything that was like, it was just surprising. Because usually you don't expect a player who's having one of their best seasons to go out and talk bad about one of their coaches, because there's a respect thing involved in that. But JJ Redick, like we know JJ Redick and his media and his like the face that he brings. He speaks the truth and nothing but the truth. So obviously, like what he said, it like a lot of people might not want to hear it, but a lot of people like they might have to hear it from him, because he's not going to sugarcoat anything. He's going to say things for how they are. And given how like the situation that the Bucks are in right now, it's starting to look like he might have like a little bit of a point. And funny thing that I should also mention was that he allegedly told the Bucks ownership, "I don't understand why you're doing this." He told the Bucks ownership he doesn't understand why they're firing Adrian Griffin and replacing him with Doc Rivers himself. And he was surprised at that. And honestly, I'm surprised at that too, because so far they've done better with Adrian Griffin as their coach. So replacing a coach mid-season so far has not been looking like it's the best move for this team, especially with someone like Doc. And having one of your players say this about you on live TV is not a good look, especially over the break, where now there's a lot more media outlets that are going to be covering NBA news because they need to get NBA news out there. So it's not like this can be pushed under the rug. Now, maybe Doc can he can use this quote and be take it personally and turn the Bucks season around. But again, that's a little bit of a task given Doc Rivers and his experience. So with that, we're out of time with this first segment, talking about the Doc Rivers situation. So I'll probably bring it up again a little bit later in the few more podcasts if the situation gets worse. But and when the playoffs come around, I'm definitely going to bring this back up yet again. But we're going to go into the second segment, which is going to be looking at Jason Tatum's comments on himself, because he recently had an interview and he was asked how he feels whenever he steps on the court. So we will go ahead and look at that after this short break. So stay tuned. I will be right back.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. And in the second segment, we are going to be looking at an interview recently with Jason Tatum. But before that, I'd like to remind everybody, as always, to please remember to tip and to donate to get your comments recognized. The link is in the description, and it is also displayed below the ticker on the bottom of every show segment. That is gsmcsportsnetwork.com/tip. Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Once again, the link is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork.com/tip. And with that out of the way, we can go ahead and go into our second segment, which is going to be talking about Jason Tatum and the comments that he's had on his recent interview. So, obviously, like with the regular season on a bit of a pause, like that leaves room for a lot more stories and to be unfolded, and a lot more sources coming out with news and quotes from all sorts of players and all sorts of outlets. And one of those things is Jason Tatum's comments on himself in an interview and what he thinks about himself every single time he steps on the court. So I didn't expect him to be humble in this interview whatsoever, given his play style and the fact that he has been the face of the Boston Celtics since he was drafted. And it doesn't matter like the role that he is or like the role that anyone is, but he said, "I believe every night I step on the floor, I'm the best player." And I believe that that's sort of like the right mentality that any player should have when they're stepping on the court. And again, it doesn't matter if you're a role player or if you're a bench player or if you're a starter, if you're the face of the team, if you're the last man that comes off the bench. That is the right mentality that every player should have when they step on the court, because that mentality, like, it sort of, if you believe that about yourself, it'll drive you to play a lot better, and you'll end up getting a lot more confidence in yourself and in your abilities as a basketball player. If you go into a game day in and day out thinking that you are the best player on the court. And a lot of people were very, very quick to Twitter about this quote and completely backlashing Tatum, saying that obviously like he would think this because his team is so good, and how he's been the player on the team, but while he is the best player on his team, he's not the best player in the league, and he's not always the best player on the court. At least that's what Twitter always says. At least those are the comments that were circulating around, like, after I saw the thread on Tatum saying that he believes he's the best player on the court. And I sort of don't understand where that hate is coming from, because I feel like that's sort of like what every player should think, and that's what every player thinks when they step on the court. When obviously they're going to think that they're the best player, especially if they're the best player on their team. So I don't think it's like right to criticize him for this quote, for him saying that like he believes that he's the best player. Like, you'd want somebody like that to be your best player, and you want someone with the confidence level and with the actual basketball skill to be able to back that up. Because we've seen it several other times where a player might be able to talk the talk, but he might not be able to walk the walk. Like, for example, Jordan Poole. We've seen Jordan Poole talk a lot since he became a very big face of the Golden State Warriors and was being talked about as the third Splash Brother. We saw him talk a lot, and we didn't really see him walk the walk that much. So obviously, like, there's pros and cons with being confident in your abilities. I think Tatum has definitely proven enough for him to display that kind of cockiness and that kind of mosky. So with that in mind, again, I don't really understand where this hate keeps coming from. I think most of the hate comes from Kobe fans, because a lot of the times, Jason Tatum, like, he said it numerous times that he is one of the biggest Kobe fans in the face of the league. And he's watched Kobe ever since he was young, and he wanted to get drafted by the Lakers because of Kobe. He modeled his game after Kobe. He worked out with Kobe. Everything with this kid is Kobe. And I guess a lot of fans don't really like how ridiculously attached he is to Kobe and how he's sort of come up short in a lot of these games, when it sort of feels like with Kobe's mentality and with Kobe's clutchness and that reputation that he has, he would end up getting over the hump in a lot of these games and end up winning these games in the end. And he hasn't really done that yet, despite being in numerous positions to be able to do that. So a lot of players that confess to liking Kobe, there's a lot more stipulation, because a lot of the fans, they hold Kobe to a very high regard. And it's like, if you're going to use his name, you better make sure that you bring your A game every single time. And it's like, if you like him, you have to drop 30 every time. And it's unfair, because Kobe he's had several games where he didn't end up dropping 30, or he ended up shooting a lot more shots than he ended up scoring points. And as a Kobe fan, like, I'm not blind to that. I'm not blind to any of those games. Like, those games definitely happened. So, and not only that, another thing that doesn't necessarily help him is the fact that he lost his first finals appearance. And he didn't particularly play well. He played a little bit scared. And a lot of people, again, Kobe's mentality and Kobe's playstyle, he never played scared. At least people don't remember him playing scared. I remember him playing scared in 2000 and, let me think of the year exactly. I believe it was 2007 when Kobe took the Lakers to the NBA playoffs. They played against it was 2006, 2007, one of those years. They played against the Phoenix Suns, and they were up 3-1, and they needed to win one more game, and they blew a 3-1 lead in the first round. They were the 7th seed, and Phoenix was the 2nd seed. But again, Kobe, in the games that they needed Kobe, he didn't show up when it mattered most. And it's like, a lot of people forget about that kind of game, because of all the great moments that Kobe has had as a player, that gets talked about a little bit more. So with that in mind, it's unfair to sort of put all of this pressure and stipulation on Jason Tatum just because he likes Kobe. Because again, like, Kobe also made mistakes. Jason Tatum, while he didn't play well in that final series, he had a better final series than Kobe in Kobe's first final series, and he also had a better first final series than LeBron. So it's not like he played bad. It's just he didn't play. He didn't get them to win. Which is, like, again, that's the ultimate end goal. Like, you want to win in the end of the day. But again, it's like the rest of the fans are a little bit too harsh on him. And another aspect that gets played into that, apart from the fact that he likes Kobe, is the fact that the Boston Celtics have been a very good team for a very long time. Now, ever since Tatum was in the league, like, ever since he got drafted, the Boston Celtics have been in a spot to compete for the title. And it's just every single year they end up falling short. I said that previously. They were like San Francisco of the NBA. And so far, that sort of holds true because they've made the Eastern Conference Finals every single year, practically every single year, but every single year they end up losing when it matters most. And it's a pattern. It's a very common pattern that Tatum has, and there's not really much of an excuse for it because they they have all the players that they need, and they have all the pieces to a championship contending team. They had the bench, they had the starters, they had the second option with Jaylen Brown, and they have the star of the franchise in Jason Tatum. So it's not like that they don't have the pieces to go far and do something in the playoffs, because they definitely do. It's just they don't for some reason. And especially with this year, with the starting lineup that they have, it's like there's really not much of an excuse for them to not make the NBA Finals with the team that they have, given how well they've been playing in this regular season as well. So with this in mind, that's another thing that he gets criticized about, because he's saying this behind the fact that he's had a great team his entire career. And it's obviously the MVP is usually it's the best player on the best team. And Jason Tatum has always had that luxury of being the best player on the best team, because the Boston Celtics have more likely than not always have been one of the best teams when Tatum was in the league. So he gets a lot of hate because he's been playing with a lot of great players, and he's talking as if, he can carry a weaker squad, which is, again, we don't know entirely whether or not that's true, because he's never played with a weaker squad. He's always had a squad full of players that are competent enough to do things with the basketball and that are talented enough to create shots on their own and score efficiently and defend efficiently as well. So he's talking he doesn't have other good players on his team, which is something that a lot of fans don't really appreciate, especially with especially Boston fans, because some Boston fans might feel a little sentimental on some of the other players. Again, they might love the fact that Tatum is confident, but at the same time, it's sort of like he's putting more emphasis on himself being the reason why the Celtics are so successful, rather than his team being good as well. And again, it's a stipulation, and for some reason, a lot more players would get criticized for having a good team than they would for having a bad team. It's just how the league works. But I just wanted to touch up on that and my opinions on it. I personally don't think that Jason Tatum is the best player in the league. I think he has the best team in the league, but the best player, no, I don't think he's the best player. He is the best player on the best team, though, and really that's sort of the only thing that you really need to say that you're the best in the end, because if you're the best player on the best team, there's nothing that anyone can really say about you if you end up winning. But that's the problem with him. He doesn't end up winning in those games. So until he does, I don't think it's safe to call him the best player in the league. Until unless something happens where the Boston Celtics, they somehow get worse, but he still keeps their team afloat, then maybe he'll have an argument. But right now, it might sound a little disrespectful, but he's sort of in that same category as Paul Pierce was when he was in the league. It's like Paul Pierce was a small forward, with the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics, they were a great team in the East, but while he was the best small forward on his team and he was the best player and the best scorer, there were other small forwards around his time that were better than he was. Like, for example, Kevin Durant. There was also LeBron James. Tracy McGrady, while he wasn't a small forward, he was 6'8", so he was also one of the players getting a lot more talk than Paul Pierce. Same with Kobe Bryant. He's in that mid-tier of sort of he's good. He's really, really good. And he's elite, actually. You know what? That's what he is. He's elite, but he doesn't really get talked about as much, simply because of the fact that he's on the Boston Celtics and the fact that they're a great organization and a great team. So there's not really much that needs to be talked about now. He just needs to do it. He needs to win. And that was the same story with Paul Pierce. He needed to win. And being in the shadow of great small forwards like LeBron James and Kevin Durant, it's not really easy. But with that, we're out of time for the second segment, so we're going to go into the third segment where I talk about why Kevin Durant chose to go to the Brooklyn Nets instead of joining the Knicks in 2019, because there was a new updated information on why he ended up choosing the Nets as opposed to choosing the Knicks. So I will go ahead and explain a little bit more of that after this short break.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Hold on, there we go. And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we're going to be talking about Kevin Durant again. Talking about the infamous move to the Brooklyn Nets in 2019, and the move that was both the start and the end of my life as a Brooklyn Nets fan. So there was more news that broke out as to why Kevin Durant ended up choosing Brooklyn over the Knicks. But Kevin Durant's agent apparently really wanted him to sign with the Knicks. Like, he was really pushing the Knicks agenda and him going to New York, because like that would have been good marketing. That would have been good for business. There would have been cameras all over him. The media wouldn't be able to stop talking about Kevin Durant, for God's sakes, if he would have been on the Knicks. And in long story short, there is a quote that he does say, which I will bring up later, but in long story short, he preferred going to Brooklyn because Kyrie Irving signed there first. And so, according to Durant, the Knicks at the time, and the whole thing, and the whole situation, and the whole free agent signing, it had to do with the state of the New York Knicks at the time. He said in a quote, "I was looking at the team. The team was not cool to play for." So that was the end of that quote. Basically, he just wasn't cool playing with the Knicks. And another quote: "The Knicks weren't cool." So in other words, he didn't think you know what? I don't really want to say that, but you know what? Forget it. I will say that. So it doesn't really take much to sugarcoat exactly what he means by the Knicks weren't cool. So obviously at the time, the Knicks were struggling with the team. And the Knicks recently came off of trading Carmelo Anthony over to the Oklahoma City Thunder. So the only bright side on their offense and the only bright side on their team at the time was Kristaps Porzingis. And who's surprised? Kristaps ends up getting injured that same year. So the Knicks were coming off of a lost season. They only were able to grab 17 wins, if I remember correctly, and the team just wasn't doing really well. So, given how there was so much cap space, everybody thought that Kevin Durant was going to be the guy to go into New York and take the franchise over and make the Knicks relevant again. But that ended up not happening. He ended up deciding to go to Brooklyn, but the Knicks weren't cool. Again, it doesn't take much to sugarcoat that. The Knicks didn't have enough star power for him. It's as simple as that. I mean, he doesn't really elaborate what it meant for the definition of cool, or his definition of cool, and what it means to play for a cool team. But obviously, coming off of playing with the Golden State Warriors in the 2018-2019 season, going to the Knicks, it's a big jump it's a very big leap. He's going from being on a championship contending team to being on a team that literally was just the worst team in the league, and he's expected to sort of change that. So after 3 straight trips to the finals, and like with all the media and drama that was like everywhere around him, he wanted to go somewhere in New York that was a bit low key, and that was the reason in the article. He wanted to go to that was said in the article. He wanted to go to somewhere that was a bit low key, but like he also wanted to go to New York, and so Kyrie Irving ended up signing with Brooklyn, and that prompted Kevin Durant to go team up with him in Brooklyn and form another super team with that Nets and possibly contend. So apparently it said that he wanted to go somewhere low key, which is, it does not make any sense to me whatsoever. He signed with Kyrie. Like, it doesn't matter where you go with Kyrie Irving. He's going to cause drama in any team. It doesn't matter. And I just think that's incredibly naive. Like, you thought you were going to go to Brooklyn, and then all of a sudden there was going to be no drama around you when you signed with Kyrie Irving. That was just incredibly immature. Like, not even immature. That's ignorant almost. Like, you have to expect drama coming in from Kyrie. Just like, it's just been the player that he's shown to be. But yes, in other words, like, the reason why he chose Brooklyn was because there wasn't enough star power on the Knicks. And that's the stipulation around KD. He's Chuck said this before in on TV. He said that Kevin Durant was not a bus driver. He wasn't the bus driver. He wasn't the one driving the bus. Like, if you guys don't know what I mean, when you're saying that someone is not a bus driver, it's sort of like they aren't really the reason why their team ends up winning the championship. Like, Michael Jordan was a bus driver. Kobe was a bus driver in the second half of his career. Shaq was a bus driver. LeBron was a bus driver. All of those players were bus drivers in their career. Kevin Durant, I mean, while he does have 2 Finals MVPs, and so far he's one of the only players to win a Finals MVP in every Finals that he's participated in. Again, it's sort of like he doesn't have the same mentality as a bus driver would have, because like a bus driver would have gone to that Knicks team and he would have turned the entire franchise around. But he didn't do that. He didn't do that without help. And so far, he hasn't done anything in this league without help. Like, seriously, give me one moment in Kevin Durant's career, aside from OKC, and even then you could argue that OKC was part of that, where Kevin Durant didn't have ridiculous star power. Like, ever since Golden State, every team that he's been on has had at least 2 other All-Stars or 2 other Hall of Famers. At least. And this isn't counting some of the players that weren't All-Stars, but were also really good at the time they were on the team. So, with all of this in mind, and with Kevin Durant's mindset, and with the fact that he ended up choosing the Nets, it makes sense how it makes sense how he decides to go to a team that's a little bit less popular, because I honestly am not entirely sure if Kevin Durant would have been able to handle the Knicks media constantly being around him. Like, well, Kevin, like, he's gone so far to literally make burners to defend him. So it seems like he's a little bit sensitive, and I don't want to sound a little harsh, but like, that's sort of the perception that he has. He's very sensitive to comments on Instagram, on Twitter, and he really likes commenting on those. And excuse me, but when he was on Golden State, when he decided to sign with Golden State, when the media completely tarnished his entire reputation, he went and cried to his agent saying, "Why did you make me do this?" So obviously, being resentful for his recent mistakes for signing with Golden State, it makes sense how he's a little bit sensitive to a lot of the comments that go around on the media. Like, I mean, it's not easy to sort of like desensitize yourself to what the media says for some players, and Kevin Durant's one of them. So, but again, it's really shocking given how good of a basketball player he is, and how he still feels like he has this, it's like he has a chip on his shoulder, and like he still has a need to prove himself, which technically he still does, but at the same time I don't think he would have done that on New York. And the stipulation around the fact that he constantly needs super teams to aid him, like while so far it's proven to be true in the sense, and it's sort of like lost his respect. I mean, like, again, there's not really much that could be said other than the fact that, like, I don't think he would be able to handle the media around the Knicks, especially at that time, because there would have been a lot of pressure on him, and I'm assuming that Kyrie would go with him. I'm actually going to check real quick right now to see which signing came first. I believe it was Kyrie that ended up signing with the Nets first, but I'm just going to make sure just to see which one ended up, because obviously, like, they both made the decision in unison. So they Kevin Durant wasn't going to go if Kyrie wasn't going to go, and it was all just determined. It was all just dependent on who they were going to end up picking up. So if I remember correctly, it was okay. So they signed on the same day, but I believe that Kevin Durant was the player who signed first with that team. So but then that wouldn't really make any sense, because how would the Knicks not be cool at the time if they would end up getting Kyrie Irving on the roster? Like, you could add anybody to the team. You could add Kyrie to any team and they would become a cool team to play with, and they would become a good team to play with. I mean, I guess, like, it makes sense how the rest of the players on the Knicks, the average player on the Knicks wasn't as good as the average player on the Nets, I guess, seeing as how the Nets were able to make the playoffs at the time when Kyrie was playing, like, a little bit of games but not all the games. So I guess that's sort of why he wanted to go to the Nets, because there was overall a lot better talent. And you do want to go to the team that has better talent. So I understand why Kevin Durant, like, wanted to go there in that sense. But again, it's like the stipulation around him is that he always needs this ridiculous help, and he can never be, like, the guy on a team. And some people might argue he was the guy on Golden State. No, in my opinion, you cannot be the guy when you're with those guys, because those guys were just ridiculously overpowered. And I've talked about this a lot on several other podcasts. I don't really feel the need to talk about it that much over here, given how, like, again, I've already, like, there's not really much that can be said about, there's not really much to be said really about this. Like, we all know that Kevin Durant ended up choosing Brooklyn, and the media was going to be a little too harsh on him. And right now it's just the fact that he admitted to the Knicks not being a cool team to play on, which is why I decided to bring it up, because we all knew that the Knicks, like, they were really bad, and we all knew that, like, deep down, we all knew that in the end of the day, Kevin Durant wasn't going to end up being a New York Knick. But the reason why a lot of people thought that this would be the case was because at the time they thought Kevin Durant was a bus driver. They saw Kevin Durant as the best player on that Warriors team since he won the Finals MVP 2 times. But the thing that ultimately killed that, and what sort of changed the narrative, was the fact that Golden State ended up winning a title after Kevin Durant ended up leaving, completely changing, like, his ring argument towards, like, obviously, like, the argument before was, like, I mean, Golden State won before they got KD, but there wasn't really an argument saying that they would win when they didn't have KD after losing him. But now that there is, it's sort of, again, it becomes a lot more difficult to give value to Kevin Durant's rings, given how the same core three players on the Golden State Warriors won a championship with you, before you, and after you. So it's just not a good look. for Kevin Durant. But with that, we're out of time for the third segment, so tune in for the fourth segment where we have an update on Isaiah Stewart. And I'm just going to give a little update on Isaiah Stewart and how he's been arrested. And since there's not much talk around the league, this has been like the only talk going on right now until the games come up. In fact, you know what? In the next segment, after I talk about Isaiah Stewart and him getting arrested, I'll go ahead and I'll touch on some of like the other games that are going on tomorrow, since the NBA is going to be coming back, and we are going to be expecting, and I expect a great mid-season run coming in from the Knicks. And I expect a really poor mid-season run coming in from the Bucks if they continue this road with Doc Rivers. But we'll see about that going into later in the season. But I will be right back after this short break, and I'll go ahead and talk about Isaiah Stewart getting arrested. And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, we are going to be talking about the Isaiah Stewart situation going on in Detroit right now, and the recent little scuffle that he had with Drew Eubanks in the tunnel. There was an update recently about like 20 minutes before this stream, so I guess that's about like I'd say maybe like an hour ago, saying that Isaiah Stewart's, there was footage that the NBA reviewed about that showed Isaiah Stewart punching Drew Eubanks in the face. This was allegedly like a sucker punch, like according to the article. So he was arrested, issued a citation, and I didn't think that there was going to be nothing much left of that case. Like, I mean, it was just a sucker punch, like they'll just go on about their business, but it turns out now there's a whole court case on the matter. And he's been scheduled to go, he was arrested February 14th, and his first day in court is scheduled to be arranged on Friday, February 23rd. So it's going to be coming this week, and I don't know entirely like what the charges are going to be. And how many of and like if he can pay them off. He probably should, given how he'll have good lawyers, but again, like this is just more distraction for a disorganized organization with the Detroit Pistons. I mean, the Pistons so far this year, they haven't had the best year whatsoever, and this court case that was issued that is going to bring Isaiah Stewart to court is just a big distraction for the team that's trying to rebuild and trying to sort of change the perception that they have with the rest of the league, because to the rest of the league it's like they're a joke. And so far with this court case and like all of this off the court stuff, it really doesn't look like that opinion is going to change, because this scuffle happened before the game. This didn't even happen like during the game or like after the game. This happened before the game even started. So there still hasn't been any sort of footage or any sort of press release on what was said in the exchange, like what caused Isaiah Stewart to react the way that he did, and what caused him to sucker punch Drew Eubanks. But again, like, still, there's no room for that in this league. I said this previously, like on previous podcasts, how violence in the NBA from a lot of the players is really frowned upon. But I didn't really get to talk about like how it's dealt with in game, and about how, like, because right now the refs and the NBA as a whole, they really cracked down on players throwing these kinds of temper tantrums, both in game, before the game, after the game, and whatnot. And like, it results in a lot of fines most of the time if a player does act out unnecessarily. And it also results, if it's in game, it results in a bunch of technicals being thrown at either one player or both of the players involved. So they're definitely cracked down on like players having unnecessary outbursts in front of fans and in front of, because while fans are watching, like, kids are also watching this as well, and you don't want your kid to sort of do the exact same thing that one of the players that they're watching is doing in any given situation. If they see one of their favorite players, like if Draymond is their favorite player, for example, God forbid, and they see Draymond like punch somebody, then they're going to they might look up to him and get violent as well. And that's something that like the league obviously doesn't want, and they want to change that reputation. So it's obviously it's not something that is for this league. So given how Isaiah Stewart is not really important to the Pistons right now, especially with how the Pistons are doing as a team and their team record, is it really that important to keep Isaiah Stewart on your roster? I mean, like, if he's going to like cause all of these anger issues, if he's going to like bring anger issues to the team, and if he's going to like get himself in all of this trouble while you're trying to rebuild your team, is that really like a good help? I feel like that's just a distraction for the Pistons that they don't really need at this time, especially for someone who's as expendable as Isaiah Stewart. And I don't want to be mean or anything, but I mean, Isaiah Stewart he's a role player for the Pistons, and it's not like I don't think the Pistons would lose sleep if they ended up losing him. So, with that in mind, I personally think that the Pistons should just get rid of him, like, at this rate, and they should waive him. And if any team wants to pick him up, then any team can go ahead and pick him up. But I feel like it's just a distraction, and that's one thing that like you don't want a rebuilding team to be forced to like have like a bunch of cameras being faced on you, because now the talk isn't even going to be about them focused on the season. Now it's going to be like focused on how do they feel about Isaiah Stewart and the situation that's going on with him right now. And the focus is going to be like off of completely rebuilding and just on Isaiah Stewart for the moment. And if the court case, like, if it continues, and if it grows to be a big thing, then it could lead to just more distraction. And that's just something that like the league that's something that like the team shouldn't be asking for. And it's not something that, again, for someone like Isaiah Stewart, like, is holding on to him really that necessary? Like, in my opinion, I don't think holding on to someone like Isaiah Stewart should be seen as a necessary move, because it's like, why hold on to him? There's no need to hold on to him if he's going to be causing all of these kinds of problems off the court, or if he's going to be causing all of these problems on the court with LeBron James in that other incident that he had a few years back. Like, it's unnecessary. And now, a lot of you might think, oh, well, if you think that that's a distraction, why didn't you think Draymond was a distraction? Well, the difference between Stewart and Draymond is that Draymond is actually very valuable, like, as a player for that team, and he's a great teammate. So there's a lot of things that a lot of players can learn from with Draymond, and other than punching someone in the face. But like his offensive game in terms of scoring is lacking, but in terms of decision making, like, it's all there. And his defense is also phenomenal, and it's like he brings all of this immense value to the franchise. So trying to get rid of him is much more difficult, and given like the amount of value that he brings. So it's like you deal with those distractions because you know you're getting a high caliber player, and you're getting a player that is going to bring in their best game day in and day out. You're getting a player that is going to play confidently throughout the entire game, and you're getting a player that is going to provide on the defensive side of the ball, which is a facet of the game that isn't really touched upon as much as it should be in the NBA. So that's sort of the difference there between Isaiah Stewart and Draymond, and why I feel like the Pistons should they get a lot more good out of getting rid of him in the lineup than they would keeping him in the lineup. But that's all I really got to talk about with the Pistons. So I'll talk about like some of these games that are going to be coming up tomorrow, since like the season is going to be coming back at full swing. The Lakers, they go up against Golden State at 10 o'clock. That's probably going to be the most viewed game for the NBA tomorrow. It's another LeBron and another Steph Curry matchup. Obviously, like, it's a very expected matchup that everyone wants to see. And the Phoenix Suns, they also go up against the Dallas Mavericks. So we'll see if Kyrie decides to participate in this game. But if he does, it would be a great matchup between there's beef between the Mavericks and the Phoenix Suns. Luka seems to always get the best out of Phoenix in the postseason. So there's obviously like some beef between the Suns and Luka, Devin Booker and Luka. And, of course, the beef between Kyrie and Kevin Durant. There's not really much beef between those two players, but they obviously, like, they played on the same team with Brooklyn, and they separated after disappointing everybody in Brooklyn. So the matchup between those two is going to be very expected, and I expect a great game from both of them. And the Clippers, they match up against OKC. It's not going to be broadcasted, unfortunately, because, you know, the Mavericks and the Golden State Warriors game is going to be going on, and those are going to be the two popular games. Those are the primetime games. But the Clippers, obviously, they're a great team, as well as OKC, so it'll be very interesting to see which of those teams will pull out in the end. And a lot of teams play today. The Denver Nuggets, they play against Washington. That's an easy win for Denver, in my opinion. Boston plays against the Chicago Bulls, another easy win for the Celtics. The Brooklyn Nets, they play Toronto. I think that the Raptors are going to end up winning this game, but we'll see towards the tomorrow and what because anything can happen in these games. Again, I personally don't think that anything positive is going to happen with the Brooklyn Nets, given how it's going to be the first game with Kevin Ollie as the head coach, and he needs to make all these adjustments, play with a really mediocre team. So it's going to be tough, but there's also a lot more games. I'll talk more about them tomorrow when I'm going to go on my podcast again. And I'll just give a little recap of all the games that are going to be going down tomorrow at around 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 7:30. But with that, that's the end of this podcast, and that's the end of this segment. So thank you for tuning into the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. And as always, I remind you guys to please remember to tip and to donate to get your comments recognized. The link is in the description, as well as displayed in the ticker of every single show segment. streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself, the host, you guys, the viewers. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. But with that, that is the end of the show. I am your host, Nelson. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, take care.
Mm-hmm. 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 go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna